Good morning. Good morning. My name is Fred Holmquist, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. I'm going to be talking about the problem of addiction this morning and the solution for addiction this afternoon, and the program of action that brings about that solution. These are lectures that are near and dear to my heart because they're simply my best and current understanding of the life principles that underlie the steps and account for why the steps work. The steps have been used in a tremendous variety of situations: gambling, overeating, Al-Anon, emotions, pills, cocaine, narcotics, alcohol, and the grandparent 12-step program is Alcoholics Anonymous. But the principles apply to any type of human behavior that repeats itself despite serious consequences. So we'll touch on all of that today. We're going to cover a tremendous amount of information, a tremendous volume of information, but it's all in a sequence, so it makes it a little easier to follow. But don't expect or feel that you have to get it all. I sure don't. But just let the information swirl around you and hold on to what makes sense and let go if it doesn't make sense. These two lectures today are of importance to me. It was exactly 18 years ago today that I came to Hazelden as a trainee and spent 3 weeks in treatment and then a year in the residential training program. And it turns out that I'm about to embark on a new career. I leave Hazelden at the end of the month, and I will be working at a place called High Watch Farm in Kent, Connecticut. It was started by Marty Mann and Bill Wilson in 1939. So it's a tremendous honor for me to go out there, and it's a tremendous honor for me to have worked and been a part of Hazelden for so many years. So, with that said, I'd like to follow the sequence of information that brought and continues to bring more meaning of how the steps work in defining our problem, defining our solution, and then giving us a program of action to bring about that solution. For the first 12 years of my recovery, was sober on two things: the fellowship, going to meetings, attending AA meetings, which alcohol was my drug of choice, although I got into a variety of substances. I was sober on the fellowship and wall steps. Somewhere somebody put the 12 steps up on the wall, but they didn't put the instructions for them up there with them. So I, for a long period of time, was not studying the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, where those instructions reside. And I had an individual relationship with each step, and I had a depth of understanding of the steps to the level of the words in the steps, not the concepts that underlie the steps. So wall steps are a little bit like the ingredients to a recipe. What are some ingredients to making bread? Flour, yeast, salt, water, oil. Okay, imagine if each of us had a list of those ingredients and then went off and made bread. And we just had the ingredients. What would we come up with? A great variety of things. Some of you would get angel food cake, first try, gifted. Others of us would get stomach aches from what we had tried to eat that was really kind of a sinker or a belly bomb. So what's critical beyond the ingredients of a recipe are the directions for the recipe, which ensures some consistency and success for the desired goal. So the importance of understanding wall steps is that there's more to the steps than the words hung up on the wall. Some programs, they call them off-the-wall steps. The next thing that made some sense to me was some simple information about the textbook, the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. This book is not a dictionary. It's not a collection of short stories. It's not a novel, but it is a textbook. And I never used my big book early on as a textbook. I used it as a bound set of tarot cards. When I could find it, or probably more accurately, when it found me up in a closet or behind some other books on a shelf, I'd say, oh, there's that book that has all the answers in it. And I'd mystically turn away, even more mystically flip open a page, and most mystically point to a sentence. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. So I'd think, oh my God, I'm about ready to start offering alibis and start drinking again. I better go do something. So this is not a bound set of tarot cards. It's a textbook. How do you use a textbook? It's to be studied. And where do you start when you study a new textbook? From the beginning. Now, all of this seems too simple. And guess what? It is too simple. It's often too simple for us, who are above average intelligence, above average sensitivity, and we kind of miss the point sometimes looking a little deeper than where the truth really lies. I began studying the big book at chapter 5 because I went to a meeting and they said, well, let's open up to chapter 5, how it works, and rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Interestingly enough, if you switch that sentence around, thoroughly have we seen a person fail who has rarely followed our path, it means the same thing. It doesn't work if you don't follow the path. But opening it up in the middle and starting to study it is a little bit like opening up a mathematics textbook at multiplication in the middle, before having studied basic number values, addition and subtraction at the beginning. So this builds. And the first thing we need to study and know at the beginning is what our problem is. Because there's some simple truths in life, and one of them is that the problem defines the solution. Your understanding of the problem gives you your understanding of the solution. Many of us thought that our problem was that we used too much. If you use too much, what solution is defined by that? Use less. So we tried to use less. I thought that my trouble was too much whiskey. So I started drinking beer. Again, our solution is defined by our problem. Now, a common automobile problem, if it's defined as a hot engine, defines what solution? Cool engine, okay? So I think, okay, I have a hot engine, the solution is a cool engine, I'll drive my car into a lake and solve my problem, right? I've done versions of this with my addiction. So I drive my car into a lake, I wind up with the solution based on my understanding of the problem, but guess what? It wasn't my real problem, it was a symptom of the problem. Most chemically dependent people are honestly trying to do something about their problem. Their solutions are based on their understanding of the problem, but their understandings of the problem are imperfect, and therefore what? The solutions are imperfect. So the very first thing that we have to find out is, what is our problem? Because the problem defines the solution. And that's the information that's given to us at the beginning of the big book. Now the beginning, this is my current big book. It's a paperback edition, 3rd edition. And if I were to open up to page 1, in any but the first editions of the big book, there were 16 printings of the first edition, opening up to page 1 would take me to Bill's story, which is a case history of the first alcoholic to get sober using these principles. But that isn't the beginning of the big book. The beginning of the big book is the doctor's opinion. And it's on page Roman numeral 23 in subsequent editions. Interestingly enough, and from an historical perspective, this is a 14th printing of the first edition. It happens to be the big book of Pat Butler, the founder of Hazelden. It was published in 1951, right around the time that his published story indicates he got sober. Page 1 in the first printings are the doctor's opinion. So, we need to know what the problem is because the problem defines the solution. Let's look at how Silkworth defined the problem. Addiction is very easy to understand. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to talk about an absolutely clear and concise definition and understanding of addiction. But addiction is impossible to live with, to learn what it is from. Our addiction doesn't teach us the real problem. Drugs teach us something completely different. So at the very root of every recovery is some identification with another addict or alcoholic about what the problem is. And that's where we're going to start. Silkworth said the problem had two parts. An illness of the body and an illness of the mind. Dr. William D. Silkworth, the namesake of Silkworth Hall, was a physician at Towns Hospital in New York City on Central Park West during the 30s. He'd lost his practice during the Depression, and he was doing this fabulous, humane effort of treating alcoholism back when really alcoholism was a very stigmatized, often as it still is today. But he had a program where he observed thousands of alcoholics, and a clear reality of what addiction was came to him as a person of science and medicine. He was the person, Dr. Silkworth, who told Bill Wilson what his problem was. Remember, every addict has to kind of get a sense of what their problem is. Dr. Silkworth told Bill Wilson what his problem was, identified his problem, which then helped him identify his solution.